Frequency separation. I've made it really easy for you. Hi everyone, frequency separation, at last a Photoshop action that will help you through the whole process so you don't get lost. Watch the video, download the free action and never get stuck again. I've also included at the end some dodging and burning and some additional skin softening if you want to watch more. For this frequency separation video, I'm going to give you an action, and it's unlike any other actions because this one I've actually built in a stop for the Gaussian blur, so you can actually adjust that. But more importantly, I've added a text layer for you as a help sheet, so you can turn this off and on while you're working, or you could even just drag it into another layer if you want to keep it totally separate from the image. Depending on the size of the image you're using and your sensor or your cropped file, then the text may come in too small or too big, and just go to the text icon and change the font size until it's readable. But hopefully that will help you a lot, particularly if you don't do this very often. So it'll be a little reminder for you, and hopefully that will work and keep you going rather than to have to keep delving back into things. So this file here is a stock image from Unsplash. They offer free stock images. There's also things like I think it's Pixabay and Pexels as well is another good one. So this is from Unsplash, and I've got to say thank you to Josiah Lewis here, and I will actually leave a link in the description below if you want to download this image and try this once you've got the action. This action is built around using 16-bit images, so don't try this on 8-bit images. And in reality, if you're going for this sort of detail, you really want to make maximum use of your file. I will take you through installing the action, but also at the end, the reason I've chosen this image is because this lady has got some pores showing. It's a really detailed image, and this is fairly normal, and only by applying lots of makeup you get away from this. At the end, after the frequency separation, I'll do a little bit on how I go about trying to just soften down pores, and I'll also talk a little bit about dodging and burning. And I will put in the description below some timestamps, so if you want to go straight to those, you can do. So first of all, let's look at adding an action, in case you've never used actions before. And if the action palette isn't open, go over to Window and down to Actions, and if it's not ticked, it won't be showing. So click on Actions and that'll bring the actions up. Once the Actions palette is open, go over to the right hand side here on the little menu icon, and then go down to Load Actions. Now hopefully you'd have downloaded by now, and wherever you've downloaded that to, just locate it. So I've got mine in a folder called Actions, and it should come down and look just like this, frequency separation. You can either double click it or click on Open, and that will get loaded into your Actions palette, usually down at the bottom. If you want to, you can drag that and put that elsewhere, and you can also open that folder and drag these if you want to put them into your own personal folder as well. And what you'll find in here, I've got 3 actions for you. Frequency separation with the text, and then maybe once you've got used to that, if you don't want to have the text coming up, then I've produced the same action but without the text for you, and it runs just a little bit quicker as well. And then I've also included, just at the bottom there, my screen and multiply dodging and burning. I usually do dodging and burning in Adobe Camera Raw, but if I have to work in Photoshop, this is generally how I dodge and burn. So that's included, and like I said, that will be at the end there for you if you want to make use of that. So the first thing I do with an image is make sure that there's no spotting that I need to sort out first of all. So if there's anything I can get rid of initially, I would do that before going into frequency separation. So just looking here, I think we'll just attempt to get rid of this spot here. We can do it in the frequency separation, but if there are a few spots to work on, it's worth trying that as well first of all. So I'm going to try the stamp tool for this. Just using the bracket keys to change the size of the brush, and make sure I'm on 100% opacity, so 0 on the keyboard will give me 100%, close 100%. At the moment I'm not aligned, but not by it being aligned, it means that when I sample, that's going to continually sample from that same place. But 1 click there and maybe 2, and that sorts out that spot there, and I might as well get rid of this here. I'm going to try and get this dry skin out of the way as well, but that may well work better in frequency separation. Yeah, that will. So once you've done that, go over to the action Remember, this is a folder for frequency separation, so this is the actual action here, and just click on play. Now it stops automatically, click on continue, and then this is where the blur window will come up with Gaussian blur. What you're looking for here, sometimes if you squint it just helps, and you want to see that the tones are actually blending together, and you want to get that just about right. Now usually it's about 9 to 12, something like that. It would depend on your file size, the size of your sensor, maybe the lighting as well. So have a little play around with that. I am going to go around 12 for this one and click OK. Now the action will continue to run. It will produce a low frequency layer and a high frequency layer within a frequency separation folder there. And this is the text layer here I was talking about. Now depending on the size, as I said, this may be too small to read, and you may want to duplicate it and just have the text showing only, or you could drag this into an A4 new file and just get the text up so you've got it to the side. So for here I'm just going to click on the text icon and bring that up to 48. So there's all the instructions there for you, and I just will right click on here and duplicate this image, and we can turn everything else off, and there you are. You can read through all of that rather than keep switching off and on within the main image. So we're back on the main image, and the text layer off, and we want to start on the low frequency area here. Now people do things different ways with frequency separation, and it's really how you work with your tools and sometimes just what the skin's like. Generally the healing tools are where you go, but I've got to say I do actually like using the lasso tool alongside Gaussian blur. I've put in here a description of what I do with this here. But you can use these healing tools, and even sometimes the patch tool can work with larger patches of skin. So do make use of that as well. And that's the same with the high frequency, not just the low frequency. Now for me, I do work a bit quicker, and I do find the lasso tool here works much quicker for me, just blending in the skin tones. To do that, select the lasso tool and zoom in a little bit. I'm just using the command or control with the plus or minus key, which is the dash and equals as well on the keyboard. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that the feather on my lasso is okay. So I just do a quick selection and turn the mask off and on. And that looks okay. That's feathering at 40 pixels, but do check that, because again, depending on the size of your image, that could end up with a hard edge, which you don't want. So I'm just going to deselect that, Command or Control D, and then start looking at the tones in the face. And we're looking for variations of tone, like you see here, even along here, and some of these areas here. Now some of it is shadow and some of it is tone and just variations. If you look along here, there's kind of like 3 areas here. So just select what you need. I just noticed another spot there, so we will take that one out once we get onto high frequency. So there's the selection. Go up to filter, and you want blur, Gaussian blur. And some people don't understand this, and it's because they don't move the radius slider enough. And if you start moving the radius slider in the lower end, nothing happens. It's very, very sensitive. Just keep moving it up until you see something start to happen. There we go, there was a change. Just preview that, you can see that, okay? You see those tones starting to even out. What you don't want to do is go too far, and if you do, it starts to darken. There you go, you get a dark shadow where they're just blending too much, and then the darker tones start to take over. So we then pull that back. And I think about there will be fine. Now if you've got similar toned areas, you can actually go up and use the shortcut key to keep going with the same amount of Gaussian blur. Now if you haven't got Command or Control F up here, Photoshop, I think 2017 changed this so that you had to use 3 keys to repeat a filter. Now I went into Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts, and literally went back to the old style. So if you want to do that, you find filter, and it will probably come up if you've not changed it, or if you're in the latest one, with search, and look for search, and it will have Command or Control F, and all you've got to do is double click on it, make sure it's all blue, and then just put in Command or Control F, and that will overwrite the search option, which is what's currently in Photoshop. It will come up with a warning down here to say that you're about to overwrite the search tool, and if you're happy to do that, just click on Accept, and then you can very, very quickly use this keyboard shortcut when you're using the low frequency areas. So carrying on with the lasso tool, do Command or Control F. You can see how that just spreads out there. Try this area around here. This is why I like this way of using the low frequency with the lasso, because basically I'm quite lazy, and it's a very quick way of working in this area. Not so with the high frequency. And you can be fairly rough with these edges as well, especially with the getting this feather right. I'm just using a mouse here. There's no tablet. So just carry on working through. Squint now and again if you're not sure, and just see where that works. Now I don't like that. That's too much on that, because I do want a little bit of highlight. So Command or Control Z just to undo, and I'm going to go back up now to Gaussian blur and just readjust that. Let's bring that down a little bit. Maybe a touch more. And if you're not sure, turn it off and on. Yeah, that's about right. And I think just up here as well. I'm just having a little look back. Sometimes it helps to just zoom out and assess the areas of tone. And again, there's an area here I'm just going to come back to. I'm going to undo that and go back, because I want that a little bit stronger now, because I did turn that down. That's good. So just looking at the tones there, I think maybe just a little bit up here as well. Just deselect that. And what we can do, we can just check the low frequency work by alt clicking on the background. So you can see quite a difference there. That's really evened out those tones. And coming on to the high frequency layer. With the high frequency layer, I've got to say I do tend to mix the tools around. The clone stamp, and again healing and patching, but rarely patching. So going with a healing brush, let's see what we can do. We can work on little areas like this. And it's all about taking time. It's not a quick process. So going over to the healing brush, and we can just pick up areas of texture that we can paint in. Just be careful not to replicate sections. Any larger pores, just remove those. If you do get some issues like that's not worked quite so well there, then try another tool. So if we go over to the clone stamp, so pick up your source. I'm just going to come back and try that there. That's a little bit better. And try and work on this dry area here. try and just select similar areas of texture. I'm not going to worry too much about this here because this is more pores than other issues within the skin. We'll take out little small areas. And you can see we've got a duplicate of that texture of that line there, so do watch out for that sort of thing there. Also get rid of that line as well. A little bit here. And even work on little oddities like this, little bit of, maybe a little bit of dust there. And sometimes the low frequency won't remove some blemishes, and again you can just use high frequency for some of those darker blemishes. I'm not going to work on all of these lines, but again you can use this for just smoothing out lines. If you don't want to get rid of all of them, then change the opacity down to something like 40% and just blend accordingly. So just zooming out helps to look at how you're working. Now I'd like to do something with this, but I'm going to show you how to work on an area like that once I start working on the pores. So just zooming out, and again we'll press Alt in the background and just see how things are working now. So we can see some good smooth tones coming through, and also just that skin's worked a lot better with some of the marks there. Zooming out, I can just see a line here, so I think I'm just going to pull that back. We'll do that with a lower opacity on the clone tool here. So there's that line there. I'm going to select from about here, make the brush a little bit bigger with the bracket keys. I'm double clicking in areas just to build up as I'm on a lower opacity. Yeah, that's not so bad. So that's the high and low frequency layers. So, you know, depending on the skin, you may have more work to do, or maybe even less. So that gives you the understanding of using those two layers and the tools with them. Now, if you do get a situation where you want to try and soften the skin some more, it's always personal preference. You do see a lot of images completely overdone where people look like plastic dolls, and you really do want to make sure that you've got some naturalness coming through on that skin. And at this point we don't need this text layer, so let's just pop that in the bin. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually duplicate the frequency separation. And using the clone stamp with the high frequency layer, on an opacity of 40, and select a good piece of skin. So here in the forehead I'm very happy with this, and then using a large feathered brush, it's going to work over the pores. And just one click, don't drag this, and just keep working around to soften these down. And because we're working on a lower opacity, where they overlap, that helps to soften rather than just completely copy the forehead area. You can even work on the nose here. Just take that back a little bit, and some of these fine lines. And I'm aiming to overdo this. Just a bit smaller around the mouth here, and around the nose. So these are single clicks, don't drag. I think we'll also work in the eyebrow area here. and also in this area that I mentioned earlier up here. So I'm just going to reset away from there. And just some of these tones up here as well. If there's not much makeup, you can also work just in these brow areas as well. So you can see that's actually quite soft, and what we're going to do is just take the opacity down. Zoom in and out just to check your work. We don't want to lose all of the texture, even with pause, because it would just look so unnatural. And you can turn this off and on. I still think we can come just a touch more, maybe about 60% there. That just softens those pores without it looking too false. There's still natural texture showing across the skin range there. We go back and look at the original, pressing Alt. So you can see we've gone from here to there. And even for me personally, I still think that's maybe just a little bit too soft there. So something like that kind of works for me. You can spend a lot more time on this, and really you should, because I can see little blemishes like here. Let's just change over to the Move tool. You can see little blemishes here, and maybe a little bit more work around here before I went into the softening side of things. You might want to make a decision on lines as well. So if you start taking lines out over a certain age, it starts to look a little bit false. It's a case of how much you want to leave in on this. Now occasionally, depending on the lighting, this technique can actually flatten the skin quite a bit. You may need to do some dodging and burning, so bear that in mind, but if you're happy with it as it is, then that's where it stays. For dodging and burning, I generally do keep all these layered files, and I'll duplicate, so just right clicking in the title bar here and make a duplicate. And then I'm going to actually flatten this. And now I'm going to run dodge and burn down here in the action. That puts in 2 layers for dodging and burning. And at the moment they're filled with black, so they're ready to be painted in. So be on the keyboard for brush, and we want to paint with white. So we will press X to swap those round, and if they're not shown black and white, D takes them to the default and X swaps those round. So we want a white brush, and make sure it's a well feathered brush. And just use those bracket keys to change the size. And for the opacity, we want a low opacity. I want to be around about 20 or 30%. You can use the numbers on the keyboard, so 2 will actually bring in 20%. Using burn first on the mask, and if you want to do some burning in, maybe that's quite bright, that spot there. Let's take that nose back a touch. Chin there. I think just a little bit here as well. It's a tiny little bit, so I turn that off and on. You'll just see it's just a little bit of lighting going on there. It may be on the brow there. And then if you want to do any dodging, I've got to say I'm not too worried too much. I will do some just to help you here, but maybe open up this area here. I don't think it needs it that much. Maybe around the nose and under here. Maybe open up this eye here. I'm just keeping my fingers on the bracket keys and working up and down on that brush. Makes it very quick to work dodging and burning this way. As I said earlier, I do prefer to use Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom for dodging and burning, and using the adjustment brush, but in Photoshop this is the way I work. So let's have a look at that. So yeah, you can see just those minor adjustments. And again, pressing Alt on the background, and we can just see the result of that dodging and burning. So I hope that helps. Remember that really handy text block that's there as you run the action, and hopefully over time you won't need that and you can dispense with that and go with the normal frequency separation.